or three-headed frogs, or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes. Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMar, and I am quote-unquote here with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Rebecca Wood, there we go, yes. And actually, of course, when I say here, I'm got my fingers in the air doing the quotes, because actually Rebecca and I are each broadcasting from our homes again. We're using the clean feed, which is what the station uses for us to call in. And the reason
I might have the death crud.
Yes. Unfortunately, Rebecca has been exposed. And how are you feeling, Rebecca? Are you getting some symptoms, or?
Yeah, you know, it might just be a sinus infection still. I don't know what's going on.
Right, but we're playing it safe and broadcasting from home. So, and hopefully what we'll do is hear from you during this hour here. If you want to wish Rebecca a speedy recovery, the phone number is 877-909-1007. Or you can text at any time at 419-973-5841. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the pandemic here, because about COVID, because I got an email this morning from a woman named Victoria Parks, and she was one of the people that helped create and help set up the radio station that we broadcast on in Columbus, WGRN. And unfortunately, Victoria put out this long, rambling email about how essentially she's saying we're all brainwashed because we believe the COVID stuff, and we're getting vaccinated, and you know, I wanted to say that, you know, this distrust of the government, it's good, it's healthy to have a distrust of the government, because the government does sometimes tell bald-faced lies. And of course, you know, one of the best examples in history was the Iraq War, where everything used to justify going to war in Iraq turned out to be just false, a lie.
And remember, the curing polio was just a part of their plot to set us up for this decades ago.
Right. The whole, you know, vaccines that work to cure diseases, yeah, that was all just part of the scheme, apparently.
To ease us into it.
Yeah, but and of course another huge bald-faced lie was Obamacare. You know, was the ACA, where politician after politician said, "I support single-payer universal health care. That's why I'm voting for Obamacare, because it's going to be a bridge to universal health care." And of course, 10 years plus later, we would know that was a lie.
Guess what happens when you go over a bridge that's half built, Joe?
Yeah.
Sploosh!
Yeah. Exactly. So, but the problem is that you can't reject everything the government says. You can't then make that leap over to, well, this is an untrustworthy source, therefore nothing they say is ever going to be true. Because once you cross that line, now you are actually much more manipulable than if you sort of just follow things and I'm willing to bet that a lot of the people who were in the January 6th insurrection attack on the Capitol building were also, for example, global warming deniers, because once you've reached that point where you completely reject everything an authority figure says, now you can be led around by other figures, shadowy figures that want to manipulate you. And I went out this morning, as I often do, to try to get some sort of inspiration for this little bit of the show here where I just like to chat. Oh, yeah, and a preview of the show. We're going to chat here for another 5 minutes or so. And then we have a wonderful guest, Dr. Heidi Huttner will be joining us. And she's been a guest a couple times, but she's going to be talking about this wonderful movie that she just finished. And we're eagerly awaiting distribution of. Then we'll hear from our wonderful sponsors and advertisers. We'll be talking to us about, what is it that you're going to be talking to us about, Rebecca?
The Bosphorous, Joe, in honor of Orthodox Christmas.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Oh, yes, happy Orthodox Christmas. And then we have environmental news and information. And as I said, hopefully at some point during the show, we'll hear from you. You can call in anytime, 877-909-1007. And I also wanted to thank Mick Gonzalez from in the previous hour for giving us a nice lead in to letting people know that we were going to be, that Rebecca and Joe were coming on next. So just to finish up, what I wanted to talk about there is that, once you're to the point where you're completely disbelieving a source, you can be manipulated, and you can be led to the point where you actually deny what you yourself see. You can deny the evidence of your own eyes. And, the perfect example is right now, I went out this morning out in the yard, and it was 38 degrees out there, and I was, everything is thawed. It rained last night. And I remember, as a lad growing up, January was winter. January wasn't what we call this season that I call gray, where it's, a little cold, but not really. And, I know the explanation for this is global warming, and it's very clear. I can see it with my own eyes. I went outside, and I was actually raking some leaves. But people who've been so led down that path are able to deny their own senses. They're able to deny the evidence of their own senses, and they come up with some offhand explanation, or they just dismiss weather like we're having right now in Ohio as just, normal fluctuations, when, of course, there's absolutely nothing normal about it. And I just wanted to share that, I've been an environmental activist for almost all my life, but early on in our marriage, our 37-year marriage there, my wife, Carolyn, said to me, she said, "Okay, Joe, you can do all this stuff. You can do the environmental stuff and the, environmental activism and so forth. Just don't go crazy." And I've tried to live by that. I go into these things with my eyes open, but I always touch back on reality. And, the reality now is we got global warming going full blast, and you can see it and touch it and feel it yourself. Go outside, it's not that cold. And in the case of COVID, the reality is that the people who resist the vaccinations, the ones who don't get vaccinated, are the ones who are dying. And so if you're looking for an actual conspiracy, maybe that's the conspiracy. Maybe getting you not to get vaccinated is the actual conspiracy, and the rest of us are actually safer because you're falling for this conspiracy. It's not a good situation, and science is something you can always fall back on. And I believed in COVID from the beginning because of my knowledge of environmental science, because I knew the ecological rules, and I knew how novel viruses act once they enter a new population from studies on wild animals and viruses in nature. And so I knew I had a handle of what was going on because I'm an ecologist, not because I believe everything the government says, not because I trust Dr. Fauci, but because I have some knowledge. And so get your shots, folks. At this point, just help us all out and get vaccinated. So now it's time to go on to our guest, and I just want to lead in a little bit saying it. One more point where the government was telling some bald-faced lies was the 3 Mile Island accident, where government official after government official got up there and said there's no danger to the general public. There's maybe a little radiation is escaping off site, but it's not enough to worry about, and there's no meltdown of reactor rods, and blah 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 blah, all of which, as we know here 20 years later, were false. And so my guest, Dr. Heidi Huttner, has actually gone and done a documentary on what's happened at 3 Mile Island. And so, Dr. Huttner, are you with us?
I am indeed with you.
All right, great. Well, thank you for coming for Green Future. And could you just share us again your name and title?
Sure. I'm Heidi Huttner. I'm a professor at Stony Brook University, and I've just completed, or just about completed, we're doing final touches on it, a film called Radioactive, The Women of 3 Mile Island. And if anyone's interested, we have a website with that name. You can go look further, but the release is not, we don't have a release date yet. That's forthcoming.
Right. Well, the first time we had you on to talk about this movie was way back in November of 2019. Did you have any idea at that point of all the time and effort it was going to take to bring it to completion?
Not at all. I had no idea. It's my first documentary. It's a feature documentary, so it's 75 minutes in length. I'm glad I didn't know. I don't know that I would have undertaken this incredible task, but now I'm glad I did. It's just a tremendous amount of work. It's the hardest work I've ever done, but it's incredibly rewarding, and I'm really honored and pleased to have done it.
Yes, well, congratulations on finishing.
Thank you.
So it actually took quite a bit of help to get it done, didn't it? Who else could help contribute to you completing the film?
Well, we have an incredible team. One of the things I learned, as I said, I haven't made a film before, and I'm a writer. So when you write pretty much alone. And of course, you depend on other people's research and information, and you have a good editor and so forth. But films are a lot more complicated. So I have a great respect for all the people who contribute to filmmaking now that I did not understand prior to doing it. Phenomenal camera people. I have an amazing editor who happens to be a distant cousin. His name is Simeon Huttner, who I found in the filmmaking process. I didn't know him prior. We have two amazing executive producers, Richard Saperstein and Christopher Hormel. Associate producers who've been tremendously helpful, Joanne Darashow, who actually was an attorney who worked on the 3 Mile Island issue back in the day. And the people in the film itself helped me with uncovering vast amounts of information and introducing me to different people. So everyone in the film has been tremendously helpful, and many of the people in the community who didn't end up in the film but who have been a support, TMI Alert, many individuals, too many to name, but they'll be thanked. Sierra Club was incredibly helpful. They launched us. They gave us our first big donation, which helped us get started. A number of donors who were tremendously supportive, including Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and, just many folks. And when you watch the film, you'll see it. And everyone on our crew, sound people, my co-director, it's a big list, which is why when you watch a film, you see a lot of names, because it's not something our consulting producer and other producer, Judith Helsand, who's made many environmental films and has an incredible reputation. Suzanne Kay is another associate producer, daughter of Diane Carroll, and a lot of experience with filmmaking. A lot of folks. I don't want to forget any names, but they're also listed on our website that their names will appear in the film. So it's an incredibly collaborative project. Each person has exceptional skills. We have a drone cameraman who did incredible work, Roger Grange. No one person has all these skills, or you can't work alone. You need, various people on set, and you need a lot of feedback, and then tremendous research, which I did all the research, but I can't do research alone. I had many helpers and guides and folks to point me in the right direction. Joanne Darashow in particular spent, many hours going through documents, and scientists. We would hold seminars actually and go through the science. Dr. Sasha Stiles from Rocky Flats was immensely helpful. Cindy Fokers from Beyond Nuclear, Dr. Aaron Datesman, Dr. Doug Bruce. So, I mean, I could go, there's just so many pieces to this, because this is not just a love story or a story about, I don't know, something that doesn't require a lot of knowledge beyond the story itself. I mean, this is science and legal history and also the community. It's a story about the community. So the individuals that tell us their story and share it with us gave a tremendous amount of time and help.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment. You talked about finding the science, and I think one of the things that really got the anti-nuclear movement going was when people started researching themselves and discovered the terrible environmental consequences of putting radiation into the environment, and that contradicted the quote-unquote official story. And I think that is a part, where citizens actually went out and did the kind of research you're talking about and found the truth and realized what a terrible thing it was, despite what the powers that be were saying. But back to your film. So for decades, the pro-nuclear trolls have claimed that no one was hurt by the 3 Mile Island disaster. Does your film finally put an end to that lie once and for all?
I wouldn't say finally put an end. It's an incredibly complicated story, more complicated than I realized. There's many, many pieces to the pie. What we do is really reopen the case, and I don't want to get into I don't want to spoil it, but we do some heavy digging, and we also work with scientists who are doing really revolutionary work right now that is in place. So it's not a finished thing, but it has great potential to change our understanding of what radiation does to the body, so to the human body or animal body. So we really open up a whole set of new questions, and we also expose on the legal end aspects of what happened that the general public doesn't really know and hasn't been spoken of. And so both sides, the science and the legal, are going to really raise significant questions about what's happened and why we need to be concerned about nuclear power, and new ways of looking at it that have, in the mainstream, really not been considered. And of course, science is very expensive, good science, and it takes a long time to do. And you have to have the interest of scientists to go in and rethink and relook at it. So really, since Dr. Steve Wing, who questioned in important ways the dominant message that nothing happened to people there and they weren't harmed, that approach really hasn't been followed up in significant ways. So we look at sort of the people who are doing that next step now, and remind the general public of Steve Wing's work, which was really important. And so that's, I think, I don't want to say we come up with a final answer. I think we point to really significant problems in the dominant message. That's what I'm going to leave you with, and do it in a way that we think is very clear, makes it accessible to the general public, and at the same time is not histrionic and exaggerating or making claims that can't be backed up, if that makes sense. We want to be very accurate.
Okay.
I come from an academic background, so I want to be really, clear about what we know, right?
Right. Okay. So you started out this project talking to the women of 3 Mile Island, the Downwinders. What was the most poignant story you heard while making this film?
Well, there's so many. There's so many. I think the scariest thing for folks that I heard, well, there's a few of them, I wouldn't say one, was the women who were pregnant at the time and the mixed messages they got, and the lack of clear information about what to do and when to leave. And, if you were beyond 5 miles, or, you weren't told you had, it wasn't recommended that pregnant women. And so it was this, I think for the women who were pregnant, it was really most frightening for them. And one story in particular, the child was born with severe club foot and a bunch of other health issues, and they lived 10 miles. And there's just no absolute, 10 miles away from 3 Mile Island distance. And there was a lawsuit, and the child and family participated, and she suffered so much for many, many years. That's heartbreaking, and no way to absolutely prove it at that time. There was not really a true study looking at her by the government or the nuclear, nobody sort of said, okay, let's look into this. Let's dig into this. It was more citizens having to prove, which is very difficult to do. As we know with all environmental problems, the burden often is on the communities to say, we're seeing a lot of cancer. And the response is, well, how do you know? And what it would cost to find that out is exorbitant. And you're asking working class, middle class families to figure this out. They're not scientists. They're not engineers. So that's really the painful part, with seeing many people with cancers, or and how do they prove it? And they give you descriptions of metallic taste in their mouth, and it was just discounted. And you can read in Eileen Miyoko Smith's writing. She did several hundred interviews, and with people describing all kinds of things that could be considered, definitely related to a nuclear accident, right? And this was just never really delved into. It was more, they were treated like, you're imagining it, you don't really know. And that's what Steve Wing started to say, is we do see increased cancer rates, and we need to go talk to the people, right? Not just look at statistics from a hospital, but we need to, hospital records, but look at the people and listen to them. So I think, I go back to, I think it's the pregnant women who really felt this incredible fear. They didn't know what was going to happen to their babies who were in utero. And that's kind of heart-wrenching,
Yeah.
Very heart-wrenching.
Okay. What was your biggest challenge in making the film, and was there any resistance to making this film?
No, I really encountered no resistance. I think the hardest thing is fundraising if you're doing an independent film, honestly. That was my biggest challenge. And learning it. I mean, it was a much heavier lift than I thought to really to truly understand the science, which I can't say I fully understand. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I have a really good team of people who help me and who I constantly asking questions of, but to know enough to ask the right questions. So that was a very heavy lift, and learning the legal story. And I like to be very thorough, so I was honestly helped in a weird way by COVID, because we couldn't keep filming. We had to stop because of the safety issue, and that gave me a chance. I was actually quite grateful to not rush to finish, but to step back and study and peel back some of the legal history and more about the science. So I would say the two things, fundraising and really learning it thoroughly. I mean, I think what happens a lot, especially in the news media, and I don't blame the journalists. They're not funded in the way they used to be. You don't have the same kind of funding years ago where a journalist could spend a year on a topic and really learn it. It's sort of like pump out the stories. So often it's very much on the surface. This is a story that is not you cannot really understand it by giving it a quick look. It is so complicated. And it wasn't just the actual accident. There was a restart story. There was the cleanup. There was, and in each of these issues, there was very complex things going on. So, I went into it not knowing all that. I mean, we just we landed on this by accident. Not to pun, but I was invited to come to the 40th anniversary. I'm sorry, the 39th anniversary, actually, because I often get invited to come speak about nuclear issues and women. And I thought, okay. And I was working with someone, and we were considering making a film about women and nuclear disasters. And I said, come along with your camera. Let's just go see. And once we got there, we fell in love with the people, and the story seemed really compelling. But I honestly didn't know all of this about 3 Mile Island. I knew the basics, but I really didn't. So those two things are the challenge, right? Learning it, really taking the time, and raising the funds. Tough.
All right.
Tough.
So right now, the U.S. is poised to dump billions of dollars back into the nuclear industry. What warnings or lessons do you think we should be taking from 3 Mile Island?
Well, the biggest thing I learned was, we put our faith in a Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is supposed to protect us, right? And we just assume these agencies, these government agencies, are there to protect the citizens, right? And that's really not the case. They're there to, for the most part, they're very tied to the industries that they're supposed to be watchdogs for. And unfortunately, in many cases, they're not. So that is an immediate concern of mine. Who's going to watch over safety? Is that the first step in the nuclear industry, in the nuclear process of developing new plants or maintaining old ones? From what I've seen, no. So that worries me right off the bat, right? That's huge. That means and we know this with any industry. Their concern is profit, right? They want to make money, and you need to have careful eyes making sure that everything is done to the utmost to be perfect, to be safe, to protect the communities and to protect all of us. So what I've seen is that's not the case. Now, that doesn't mean every nuclear commission person. I mean, Greg Jackson was the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and he's exceptionally concerned with safety. So it's not that they're all bad and they're all, there's been a mix, right? Even the 3 Mile Island story, there were some commissioners that were really concerned, and others were more concerned with just restarting the plant right afterwards. So it's not an all or nothing, but predominantly they're concerned more with protecting the industry. So that, historically, that worries me. And the other part is, it's just from talking to the many scientists I know working on climate change, it's really a waste of money. These new nuclear power plants are, 5 times or more costly than truly green renewable energy. And why are we doing that? I mean, we're losing money that should be going to actually available, accessible, renewable sources that are ready to go now and are far less expensive. So,
all right,
they argue
here.
That we're actually losing. We're losing the fight against climate change by dumping the money in nuclear.
Right.
So that factor is really not good, is clear to me from all of the research I've done.
Okay. So I know we can't
justice issues. There's all the environmental justice issues in the nuclear cycle and all that. So there's more to it, but those are two major concerns.
All right. Well, I know we can't discuss distribution yet. We'll have to have you back on when you've got those details ready to go. In the meantime, how could people who are interested in your film's progress follow them?
Well, if they go to our website, radioactivethefilm.com, radioactivethefilm.com, you can actually sign up for our mailing list, and that way you'll find out what's up and when it's up. But we don't know, right? We cannot give out a date yet for the distribution. That's not happening. But But if you'd like to just sort of stay in touch with us, if you have questions, if you're, want to be in touch with me as producer director, please reach out. And you'll certainly be on our mailing list. So when information is announced, you'll know.
Okay. Anything you'd like to add?
I would just say, be wary of any industry that is profit driven. And really do your due diligence. Don't listen to just one side. Look at both sides always. That's what I tell my students. Then make your conclusions. But don't assume any one position is fully accurate or researched or balanced. And that's true for any issue with environmental topics. You really need it takes time, it takes effort to really understand it.
Right. Well, sound advice, Dr. Huttner. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
As I say, we'll have you back on when you're ready to distribute.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really glad to be on, and take care.
You too. All right. But now, one thing that Dr. Huttner said, one source you can trust, though, it is us when it comes to promoting our advertisers and sponsors. Yay! It's that time of the show. Foregreen Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every single day of the year. And there's several ways to get a hold of them. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. You can also go to their website, which is wcparks.org. You can search for their app, which is at any app store. Just search for WC Parks. And, of course, look for Wood County Parks on Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the Wood County Park District. And Foregreen Futures also brought to you by our patrons. And our patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. And they searched for Foregreen Future, up popped our page, and they signed up for a monthly contribution. And, they've signed up at whatever level they can personally afford. And so every month a little bit comes out of their checking account, comes over to us, and that's how we can afford to keep your show on the air. And so, and one of the things that we do when we're on the air is every week we hear from Rebecca on an interesting topic. So, Rebecca, are you ready to go?
Okay, excellent. I thought I got cut off because Koga kept barking. So yeah, this a couple days ago I think was Orthodox Christianity's Christmas.
Yeah, I believe it was Friday.
And Friday, yeah. And they're heavily associated with the city of Istanbul / Constantinople / Byzantium. So I thought I'd do something about the Bosphorous Straits. The Bosphorous Straits is a strait in northwestern Turkey, which separates Turkey from Turkey, essentially. It separates Anatolia from Thrace, two Turkish regions. And it's part of the continental divide between Europe and Asia. Except the thing is, the continental divide between Europe and Asia is really purely a continent. It's a cultural construct, as far as I can tell. They're both on the same plate. They're really both the same continent. Let's be honest here. It's really basically Eurasia. But yeah, traditionally, that's been it's from ancient times where the Greek Empire met the Persian Empire, and that's considered to be the dividing line. So, yeah, the Bosphorus is a narrow strait used for international the narrowest strait used for international navigation. So it's kind of hard. It's a bottleneck for ships to get through. Basically, connects things start up in the Sea of Azov, which is a little sort of inlet of the Black Sea, and then you go through the Black Sea to the Straits of Marmara via the Bosphorus. And then if you can go through the Dardanelles, which is another really long, twisty strait in Turkey, to the Aegean and the Mediterranean. And the Sea of Azov flows into it. Basically, that's the way the water flows too. It all comes out of the Sea of Azov and makes its way to the Mediterranean. And its name basically means cow straits, the cow straits, because there's some story about Io, one of Zeus's girlfriends, and she was wandering around. She'd been changed into a cow because Hera didn't like her, and she ran into Prometheus, who informed her that Zeus was going to change her back into a person, and she was going to become the mother of Hercules. And she was like, alrighty then. So apparently that is where that happened. Right. So also important because a lot of fish seasonally migrate between the Black Sea and Marmara. So, depending on part of their life cycle is in one or the other. Guess what Erdogan has planned? You'll never guess. Long, narrow straits, difficult shipping. He's going to make a canal. Another canal. This
I was
canal
gonna guess
is
that,
just...
actually.
Yeah, I think you were. Yeah, it was a little predictable because whenever something is a very, very bad idea, some government wants to do it for money. But yeah, it's really going to mess things up massively to the point where nobody wants this. The Mayor of Istanbul doesn't want it. The rest of the Congress doesn't want it. But yeah, it's been approved by their environmental ministry, and it's going to massively mess up both the water supply of drinking water for humans and birds and everything else, and also migratory bird routes. Istanbul has apparently historically gotten most of its water from Terkos Lake, and this is pretty much going to destroy Terkos Lake's Sazlider stream, and a reservoir with a completely unpronounceable name to non-Turkish speakers. Oh, no, that's the reservoirs for Terkos Lake. And then there's a lagoon. There's an important lagoon, which is a stopover for a lot of migrating birds. The Kukusek Mese Lagoon? Or Kukusek Mese? Yeah. I just can't even. It's really long in Turkish. But yeah, it's been approved by the environmental ministry. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Erdogan is at the massive public works and monument phase of his dictatorship there of Turkey. He's there. Right. Turkey's doing all kinds of massive projects, just like the old Soviet Union. Oh, okay, go ahead.
And this may be one of the worst of his many, many bad ideas. So yeah, it's going to run parallel to the Bosphorus. This is a problem because the Marmara is the more saline of the two. It connects the Marmara and the Black Sea, and the Black Sea has a higher organic content, and the canal is going to kind of even them out in a way that's going to be very bad for everyone. Because the influx of cellular organisms is going to basically eat up all of the Marmara's oxygen, killing everything. And it's going to cause a stench like rotten eggs that you're going to be smell all over Istanbul on both sides, and the water source will have to be switched to very expensively to the heavy polluted Sakarya River on the other side of the straits. Oh, and Istanbul is in the Bosphorus is like a huge tourist draw, so it's not going to be no more little boat tours and things that you can charge a tourist for. No sorry bobbers. It's just going to be really stinky.
Wow. And the Environment Ministry approved that, huh?
Yeah, it's not good. No. We can only hope, this somehow doesn't happen, but it's really not looking good.
Okay. Well, thanks for that update. It is... Have you covered it, or was there more you wanted to say?
No, that's about it. Yeah, right. Rotten eggs, giant stinky rotten eggs.
I guess book your trip to Istanbul now before the huge ecological disaster that they're working on creating there, and you'll have a much more pleasant stay.
Not going to want to go in a few years, apparently.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Rebecca. Thanks. All right, and
you're welcome.
I forgot to mention, of course, now that Heidi Huttner is off the line is open for callers at 877-909-1007. And we still can take texts, even though we're broadcasting from home, 419-973-5841. Okay, on to ecological news. And got to lead off with some bad news here. The wolf extermination of the West is going full blast. President Trump eliminated the endangered species protection for the wolves, and the hunters have just gone crazy out there. Over 1,000 wolves have been killed so far this season in Idaho, Wisconsin, and Montana. Over 450 of those, over 500 of those in Idaho alone. They're even exterminating the famed Yellowstone wolves, the pack that got reintroduced that attracts literally millions of tourists every year come to Yellowstone with the purpose of seeing a wolf in the wild. But they don't care. 20 Yellowstone wolves have been killed so far, and the season is far from over. That's about a quarter of the Yellowstone wolf population, or about a fifth of the Yellowstone wolf population. So,
wasn't there something about people who've been killing Mexican gray wolves, which is illegal still?
I haven't seen that story, but
I heard some got killed, and because they're just slaughtering all of them indiscriminately.
Right, because they are like, oh, endangered species protection's gone, let's kill them. And of course, this is re-endangering them. I would say that after losing, so many wolves already this year, that the population is again endangered. But it can take, a decade to get listed on the endangered species list. Now, President Biden famously said he was all in on protecting the wolf, and his Secretary of State, Deb Haaland, has the ability to sort of emergency relist them, I think. But so far, nothing coming from that quarter, and we really have to wonder. What did Biden mean when he said he was all in on wolf protection? Because we're not seeing it. I would need to
see him when he's against wolf protection.
No.
One shudders to think what that would be. He'd probably just, nuke Yellowstone at that point.
Could be.
I can't imagine anything worse that he could be doing.
So we'll see what happens with that. There is a movement to relist the wolves, and a whole bunch of different organizations are putting everything they've got into trying to convince the government to relist them. But so far, no progress there. All right. Next, this has to do with Line 3, the pipeline battle in Minnesota. As we've reported, they're trying to pin felonies on a whole bunch of people, and the people that protested at Line 3 was a whole cross-section of the population out there in Minnesota. It wasn't just some young hotheads or whatever. It was, we had octogenarians out there on the front lines. Literally, people from every walk of life. Over 1,000 people got arrested at Line 3. And it turns out that one of the prosecutors, a fellow named Jonathan Frieden, thought he was going to get money from Enbridge for doing this, because Enbridge has put out a fund, created a $4 million fund to fund the police that were doing the arresting and the brutalizing, because there was a fair bit of brutality used arresting these people. And they got paid $4 million for doing that. But Enbridge said to this Jonathan Frieden guy, no, you don't get any of that, buddy. It's just for the frontline people, just for the guys with the pepper spray and the billy clubs. You have to pay for the prosecution yourself. But I did want to say that, so what has happened is an institution which is supposed to protect the public is now being used to persecute the public for the benefit of the private. This company essentially hired all the police of the region to beat people up and arrest them. And as I said, the protesters, they represented the public. They were a broad cross-section. There were rich people, there were poor people, there were old, young, men, women, everybody was out there on the front lines because they didn't want to see their beautiful Minnesota destroyed. But $4 million apparently is the price for getting the police to help. But the poor prosecutors has to do it all on his own dime now. So maybe he'll get disgusted and just dismiss all the cases. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that story. Some good news. Scotland has shut down their second to the last nuke plant, Hunterston B. It went down on Friday at midnight, and there was a single push of a button, and this plant, which had been operating for 40 years, even though it was only designed to operate for 30 years, was finally and forever closed down. And I woke up very happy Saturday morning for some reason. Maybe it was this. Maybe I was sensing this shutdown. But the Scotland reactors were graphite reactors, kind of like Chernobyl. And they have, because there's still one operating in Scotland, they have cracks in the graphite blocks, which are very dangerous, and it could literally cause the plant to burn up. But Scotland is going renewable in a big way. Scotland has got more than 100% capacity in wind and solar right now, and they're still building more wind. They're going to, as a country, they're going to become clean energy exporters, both direct electricity directly and hydrogen, all generated with wind and solar. And so, take that, pro-nukers who say it's impossible to run a region, a big grid without nukes. Scotland's doing it. They're doing it right this minute. And so that's some good news. And one more piece of good news. And Heidi Huttner was talking about how the NRC is largely enabler for the nuclear industry, which for the most part is true. But occasionally they come through. And like they did earlier or last year when they denied the Trump administration's assertion that radiation is actually good for you. And so that was nice. And they just did something else kind of good. There was a company called Oklo, O-K-L-O, Oklo Corporation. They wanted to create microreactors. And they put in a combined construction and operation application to the NRC. In other words, they were saying, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to build this microreactor. We just know we're going to build one. And so license us right now to essentially figure out what we're going to do as we're building it. And the NRC had the good sense to actually reject that. So that was very nice. And so once in a while the NRC does actually do something regulatory. And part of this might actually be a little bit of self-servingness, because one thing that I pointed out when I was doing my public comment on the idea that, opposing the idea that radiation is good for you, I pointed out to the NRC that if they allowed that to go through, then there would be no more need for the NRC, because the NRC is there, but supposedly to protect us from radiation exposures. But if radiation is good for you, then we no longer need a regulatory agency. And I think something similar may have been going on here, because if companies are allowed to combine their construction permit with their operation permit, then that means only half the bureaucracy is necessary at the NRC, because right now they've got people that look over the application for construction, and then people who look at the finished product and say if it's safe or not. And so, but whatever the reasons, they denied the combined permit, which is a great thing. So that's pretty much it for what I had all prepared for this episode. So I just wanted to say, thank you all for listening. Thank you so much. And if you have any comments on what you've heard or anything, or show suggestions or ways we can improve the program, you can send an email anytime to joe@joedemar4agreenfuture.org. That's JOEDEMAR DEMAREFOR, agreenfuture.org. Or you can, the text line is always open. You can text anytime, 24/7 to 419-973-5841. And any questions, any kind of issue that you've got, I am going to be working next week. I'm working on trying to get a guest from the CHEJ, Center for Health and Environmental Justice, because I want them to comment on this whole Superfund $1 billion shot to the Superfund, which is nice that they're putting the Biden administration's going to put another $1 billion into cleaning up Superfund sites, but I'd like to get their so that's what I'm working on for next week. And anybody who isn't an environmental organization that's doing something that you want covered, don't hesitate to contact us, and we'll get you on the air, and then we'll get you on the podcast. And our podcast, last week we were number 62 out of thousands on the Podomatic news and information subcategory. So thank you to everyone who's listening to and downloading the podcasts. You're definitely keeping us up there. All right, well, that's about it. Rebecca, do you have anything more you wanted to talk about?
Basically not. No, I'm good.
Okay. Did Josh, did I hear you cut in for a second there? I have a minute. Okay. Well, I want to say in this minute that one of the big things you need to do is get out into the nature. The news can be kind of down sometimes, but get out there. And I went walking this past week. I saw 2 bald eagles on the Slippery Elm Trail, which was kind of amazing. So nature will always surprise you. It'll always hold your attention. It'll always make you feel better. I mean, they've got studies to prove it, talking about scientific truths. So get on out there into the nature and keep listening to For a Green Future, and we will keep broadcasting. We'll be back next week. This is Joe DeMar.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off. I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more 3-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!